Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. Two pieces of news to talk about today. One is about the Shadow of Kyoshi Special Edition. We have the images now, the part that are the Special Edition parts, and also an update on the Comic-Con panel coming up end of next week. So we'll start with the Shadow of Kyoshi news. So the Barnes & Noble Special Edition version of the Shadow of Kyoshi, some people have managed to get it early and have posted images of these illustrations of the characters. That was what it was revealed as. We're going to get a handful of pages featuring illustrations of the characters from within the book. We have it now. So we get some images of Kyoshi, Rangi, and Yoon. So our three sort of teenage characters from the YA novel series. Makes sense. You maybe wish they'd covered some of the other characters like Lao Ge and so on, maybe the new Fire Lord from this book, but, you know, cover the teenage characters makes sense. So we get two images of Kyoshi to start off with. They're very nice art, of course, but ultimately there's not too much to talk about here because we know what Kyoshi looks like, and it seems like pretty much across the years Kyoshi is Kyoshi. She has that look, those specific items there for a reason, and they're well done portrayals of the character. Next we move on to Rangi, and I think it's also similar here in the sense of, like, once we got our first official look at Rangi, it was like, okay, that makes sense for how she looks. It was always going to be a character that would somewhat resemble Azula because of just the situation Rangi is in. She's going to be a, active firebender character who is sort of from Fire Nation nobility, female character. So it was always going to be female character, teenager, in Fire Nation armor, but the difference being, one's in modern Fire Nation armor with Azula versus older style Fire Nation armor, Rangi, and then just different hair, slightly different face to make her look distinct from Azula. And I think that the artist definitely did a good job. Of course, we know the artist took heavy inspiration from, fan art and stuff like that, but, that's a cool thing as well. But it also points out that the book itself wasn't particularly in-depth in terms of describing what the characters looked like, so we have been kind of heavily reliant on fan art, and now there's obviously been such a demand. Can you please show us, like, officially what these characters look like? So, people can cosplay, the fan art can be as accurate as possible, and that's the benefit here of, like, our three main characters here. We get a better look at them. We always know what Kyoshi looks like. Now we know what Rangi officially looks like, of course, in some nice new images of her. But also now we get a sense for what Yoon looks like. And we just had no real sense for this. I don't think I've even seen any fan art of Yoon. Maybe I just haven't looked enough, but I haven't really seen it out there. So this is actually quite good. Just to get to see, okay, teenage earthbending male character. We know he's a super skilled earthbender. They call him here a generational earthbending talent, which I like that terminology. And just the boots there, the kind of bracers on his wrist, the kind of flowing robes, and especially I think the hair, the kind of messy at the front, but then he's got the sort of ponytail. I like it makes him feel distinct. Like they could have started from a position of, like, okay, teenage earthbender characters. We have like that are male. We have like Haru, Bolin. So it kind of feels like, okay, like somewhere in between there in terms of the way you go about doing this. And I think he looks quite distinct for sure, and especially when you get to the next images of, like, the three of them together, they definitely fit together, that this is a group of three, friends. It does make me wonder in this book, like, I don't have my copy yet, so I'm still in that speculation mode, like, oh, does this maybe tell us that Yoon in this book does play a role where he more reunites with his friends and they become a team in the Fire Nation for the plot of this book, whereas I think most people were expecting that he'd maybe play a more villainous role where he pops in, does something, has a few encounters with the characters over the course of the book before we resolve things towards the end. But now, like, they're putting him in, like, hero poses with the characters, as we see here. The three of them, like, I think clearly represented as if, like, they're in the same scene together, presenting them as a team. that definitely seems interesting to me. So it definitely calls into question, like, I really don't know what role exactly Yoon is going to play in this second book. So that's definitely exciting. But again, my final thoughts really here on these special edition pages is just that, why aren't they just in the standard version? Like, I really don't get why this is considered extra content. Like, the first and only canon images of the characters, why aren't they just in there by default to add a little bit of a visual flair to the book? It just feels so unnecessary to make what is, in the grand scheme of things, like a fairly like low key like special edition, like a couple of extra pages and like that's it. Obviously, if you have the ability to get it, the Barnes & Noble version is the one to get, but I didn't like this with the first book and the map that they had, and I especially don't like it here, just because, you know, we're now going to be forever just reliant on, like, oh, you could only get the images of these characters if you're from specific countries. So that's that. The other piece of news is about the Avatar Comic-Con panel. Mike DiMartino, of course, he's going to be on the panel, actually mentioned on Facebook that it's already done. His post says, "I did a virtual panel about all things in the Avatar publishing universe with Faith Erin Hicks, FCE, and Jean Luen Yang. It was a fun conversation and great to catch up with these super talented writers and artists. Hopefully we'll see you in person next Comic-Con. I don't know all the details about how this virtual Comic-Con thing is going to work, but the panel is scheduled to go live on Friday, July 24th, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And he links then the Comic-Con website with the details on the panel specifically, which is basically what I covered in the previous news update that announced this panel, basically. So the reveal here, the panel has been pre-recorded. When we get to 1 p.m. on Friday, July 24th, we are just going to be watching a YouTube premiere of a video that's already done. So the second, I suppose, the video is done, it's going to be up there, video on demand, to watch whenever you want, which I guess is cool. The question is obviously, you know, is there going to be news at this thing? That's what everyone is basically wondering, because if you have any experience with these Comic-Con panels in the past, when they don't have news at them, they're not that interesting. There's maybe one moment in each panel, like every year, where it's like, oh yeah, this creator said this one kind of interesting thing this year, but the rest of the panel is not worth watching. And because you're watching like 1% of the panel, like, who's going to actually watch it? Typically they are not very interesting. You'd think, like, how do you get all these important people involved in the creation of all these books together and you create boring content with them? But they've managed it. Like, it was this exact lineup last year and the panel really wasn't that good. So how is it going to work this time? Well, obviously we don't know exactly how it works, but if it's a full hour, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m, that would suggest the video that they're putting up is an hour long. We'll see how they edit it in terms of, like, will they put, like, because they have time to edit it and retroactively put stuff in, are they going to have, like, kind of advertisement things to basically act as actual breaks in the middle of the discussion, or did they just get on a call and talk for an hour? Because I haven't seen anywhere before this that they've asked for questions for this panel, so I doubt there's a Q&A that's part of this, meaning that there's no trivia or like audience interaction stuff that's part of it, outside of, who knows, like maybe Dark Horse or Abrams Books have like a competition thing that they put in there during the premiere of it. Again, I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. The question here obviously is, does the fact that they pre-recorded this, does that add interest to it or take interest away? Does that make it feel more important or less important in terms of, like, there could be news at this thing? I still lean on the side of, if there's going to be news in or around Comic-Con, it won't be revealed at the panel, because it hasn't happened in the last bunch of years and it just doesn't seem to be the way that they go about doing it. I think there's a little bit more of a chance here because it's a full-on live thing that's going to be a video that's available to all. But beyond that, I still would expect it to be more like IGN, CBR, whatever, like Newsarama or those type of websites there's going to be an article if there is any news. And the reason people are expecting news is because they told us to expect news. Rachel Roberts literally said fans of Avatar and Korra will be excited for the stuff that we have coming up. There hasn't been a Korra book announced. So we know there's at least a comic, a book that is still to be announced. And we have the Korra comic writer there, as far as we're aware. So if there's anyone to do it, it's this. But if it has been pre-recorded, I don't know if they would pre-record a thing where, like, look, we're going to talk about all this news. Faith Erin Hinks is going to announce her next project. FCE is going to announce the next book. Jean Yang is doing another Avatar thing. There's no way they're doing a full-on big Avatar news publishing stuff that's been pre-recorded. At least in my opinion, and sort of the way Mike talks about this. Especially just the wording there. It's just like, it was a fun conversation and it was great to catch up. That to me gets the impression that it probably was more of just a conversation. That it probably wasn't even particularly heavy on promotion of recent books or anything like that. They probably did just get on there and talk generally about Avatar. They're my expectations based on previous year's panels, which is that you go in there with no expectations and they still manage to disappoint. That is how bad the panels have been in recent years. So my expectations are still like way down low. Slightly higher than usual though, because it is live, everyone has access to this. It's not just a thing where a handful of hardcore fans are going to be on Twitter that day relaying the one person who happens to be in the room that day for the panel any information that comes out. That's not the case here. I'm very interested to see what the viewing numbers are like for the, I suppose, live premiere of the panel. That will give a great sense, I think, for the size of the fandom at this point and the interest for it. Especially if there is a lot of people asking for news, it's going to be interesting to see how badly they sort of miscalculate that in terms of creating intrigue for this versus what they actually deliver on. And that's where probably it will be all about if they do have news articles prior to this. Because this is the time to do that sort of stuff. Like, I know SDCC in the last few years typically hasn't been where news has come from. But if not now, when? Because are we really going to have to wait until like October and like set up for whatever online thing New York Comic Con's going to do for news, like it sort of has been more recently? I don't think so. I think that's way too late. I think the Rachel Roberts interview to me was like, fairly soon there'll be news of what the next Korra comic is. It has to be in or around this time. Otherwise, like, you know, by the time this panel happens, Shadow of Kyoshi is going to be out. The only new book on the horizon, any media, is Katara and the Pirate Silver. And it's become such a, like, lol, Katara and the Pirate Silver is the next big new thing for Avatar comics. People are going to read it, of course, but it's like, this is what they gave us when the fandom wants all this extra content. That's the book that they gave us. They need to deliver on some of this stuff, but I have huge doubts that this panel specifically is going to be what delivers on it. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts on the exclusive pages from the Barnes & Noble edition of The Shadow of Kyoshi, and that the Comic-Con panel that we're going to get is a pre-recorded thing from, I guess, a few days ago or whatever. What are your thoughts on that and what it means for potential news, if any, at over the course of the Comic-Con time period? But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.